We are all swinging like a pendulum through duality at times. To free ourselves from this swing through duality and into wholeness, we need to identify that internal process, spectrum, and allowance. In PSA, we will dive into the process within spectrums that are pushed by momentum, which create the structured illusion of our movement through cycles. The same cycles and patterns that form our lives. With body balancing techniques, I'll bring to light new ways that we can practically shift out of oscillation and into direction, shifting our whole paradigm. Welcome to your weekly PSA. Welcome everyone, and thank you guys for tuning in. Here is your PSA of the day. Today's episode, we are going to be breaking down the pendulum swing between sensitivity or sensibility. Now, I know a lot of us, if you are an empath, there is all of these different senses, right? That we can really start to hone in and tapping into our like higher faculties, like perception and clairvoyance and clairaudience, and there's so many different senses. And over the times and over these different ages that we've existed in, we've been really confined to these five senses of sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell, when we're actually more than that. So I really want to break down this sense of what sensitivity is and also what sensibility can be, and how we can shape and shift and grow, and how we can actually evolve our empathic capacity of being, but with practical and grounding practices within all of this. In the middle of this, we're going to be determining the abilities that our senses have, and also sitting with their effects rather than having them just sit us out. Because really think about it. When we have this sense of being empathic, we're really just seeing and being able to sense this path of emotions. And we have all these different emotions. And when we have this sensitivity to these emotions or these different frequencies or other people's thoughts, whatever they may be, we start to allow that sometimes to sit us out. And in this sense of sensitivity, it's really a reframing of our activity of our senses without letting it sit us down and become stagnant. And how we can actually turn this into a sense ability to be able to see that as a gift and see that as more information and data collection by creating more space within ourselves. And this in turn creates a level state of capacity, because this momentum swing that's in between the two, if we're looking at our ability to bring things in, right? We look at one side, we have this sensitive, and we have on the other side sensible. Now, one allows you to be able to bring all these sensitive senses in and all this information in. And on the other side, you have this sensitivity, which is allowing there's maybe too much and you have that overstimulation, you're feeling overwhelmed or maybe anxious, whatever it may be. But what is that middle point in that center of those two? That's the real growth part. And that is what we're going to identify today as capacity. And the capacity that we have, we can look at it in both ends of those spectrums. This ultimately is being swung by our capability. What we see as being capable of bringing these senses in through clairaudience, clairvoyance, um, however that may be, of you bringing in creativity through your imagination, fine tuning or discernment through your perception, whatever these higher faculties may be. This is ultimately the spectrum and the pendulum swing that we'll be working with today, and really breaking down and seeing how we can distill and catalyze the best of our sense ability. So I love to start these off with inquiring questions. And today's question is going to be, in what ways do your senses affect you? And I say affect with affect. That means the internal effect. Being overactive with your senses and the ways that we expose ourselves to different situations can leave us drained or it can leave us filled. Our senses are what allows us to experience this world and all its wonders. But when we feel like the sensations are more than what we can handle, we start to second guess our capability. This can become the growing pains of expansion. As an empathic being, we can be surely affected by our senses and how they can either be overstimulating by our environment, people, or the energies that fill them. We're going to break down what's going on here and the preventative ways that we can preserve our energies so that we can be able to do more with all of our input. Whether you're a physical, energetic, or emotional empath, these practices got you covered on all planes. So let's break down the process of this. Our senses can be static or have a sense of movement in the process of how we utilize them. In the excess of shifting those senses from resting and receptive to its state of how capable we are of utilizing them, allows us to see how we can tune them to our capacity. Senses work with sensations, either on a heightened and reactive state or a heightened and responsive state, depending on how we process the information that's being received. If we build up our tolerance in a state of trust and reliance rather than a state of determined capacity, we begin to foster a balanced perspective on how we can benefit from sensitivity and utilize it as a capability. These points between which state you choose for your senses to expand within your capacity of ability and the point of its static sitting is up to us. Allowing for the process of our perspective to swing from limiting ourself to our current capacity to an open space of endless possibility gives us freedom. The freedom to tap into an unknowing potential of what our senses are actually capable of and how we can utilize them as an ability rather than letting them sit in a constant state of where we are now. Let's go into allowance now. Seeing yourself in this state of freedom begins in the ways in which we choose to view ourselves to be limited or what we have been told about our senses. Having a heightened level of senses means that you receive information in faster or from a subtler area. How we can see and allow the utilization of that information to our benefit is determined by what we tell ourselves about it. It can either be too much, in which we become paralyzed with anxiety or limit ourselves from experiences because of the fear of what will be received, or we can see it as an ability to harness and sharpen so that we can increase our capability to improve these skills or become more adaptable. This is how we gain the power of freedom to become a pro athlete or an actively compassionate partner. We start to cultivate the ability and balance our senses by allowing our perspective to shift about what we have been told about being sensitive. So, in looking at this PSA, this process, spectrum, and allowance, we can kind of see that between sensitivity, our senses do have a process. And in this process, we can start to utilize them in how they work together. We see them for the heightened response that they can actually provide us, and we also see the diminishing and the paralyzing aspect of that. This also lies that spectrum. But what are we really receiving from this pendulum swing between going from one sense of being able and one sense of sitting us out? We start to see that freedom within both of them. We have access to all this information, all this emotional information, all this energetic information. Maybe it's all the physical information. So we see all of that stuff coming in and we start to harness the power for that. And then after that is really about how we allow that by seeing the power that is in those subtler energies, and we start to create a different or heightened cap, which caps our ability and it increases our ability. But sometimes we're afraid to expand and go against that resistance that's there, and really all we're experiencing is those growing pains of stretching ourselves and expanding ourselves and increasing our capacity, which is that middle state. But the driving factor truly here is the sense of telling ourselves that we are capable. So, P.S., this paradigm shift is going to be gaining a balance of what we tell ourselves about our senses. This is going to either push or paralyze you. Seeing your senses as being helpful to you can be the key to telling yourself that your sensitivity renders you helpless. It's always been your story. So, how can we actually take this PSA and put it into practice? I have 3 body balancing techniques that I want to share with you, and these are some things that we can actually help to hone in and really fine tune this empathic power and to increase our capability. So, the 3 body balancing techniques are going to be 1, heel grounding, 2, somatic hug, and 3, meditative insight. So check out the show notes for the written body balancing techniques, or you can click on the link in the show notes to watch a video of the practices. If you would like a little bit more guidance or a little bit more discussion to delve a little bit deeper into this on how we can apply these practices for alignment, schedule a call with me and ask about session availability. Thank you for tuning in to this week's PSA. I trust that with this widened perspective of simultaneous contrast, we can begin to identify and apply these practices to help self-regulate the momentum of these swings and dissolve rotating cycles into rocketing spirals. So I ask you, what swings you in and out of your alignment?